something interesting that happened. People are asking me, okay, Guy, but what you offer to do? I mean, what, to leave the country, to live in nature? I mean, it's going to be a chaos. It's going to be, a big balagan, like we say in Hebrew, a big mess. But something I realized that happened here in Israel, the last months I see it more. People are taking caravans with car and leaving the country, the city. I mean, something very interesting. And Israel is not that big, David.
I know.
And people to do that, I mean, it's not a step that they make. They don't make it because they decide to make it. I realize that they make it because they lost everything. The Israeli people are suffering so much.
But you see,
and
this is a really important point, this. And I know this from personal experience, because this, what I call ultra-Zionist hate groups around the world, in this network run by this cult, they're targeting people and they are calling them anti-Semitic to silence their public meetings, to silence them on the internet and YouTube and all the rest of it. And they do not represent the Jewish community. They just claim to. They self-proclaim to. What they represent is this cult that tries to silence people using the Jewish community as the excuse, because they don't want what they're doing to be exposed. The reason it's important is that these ultra-Zionist hate groups around the world, they're all locked together. And I call them hate groups for a simple reason. Their modus operandi is to get the people, the public, to hate their targets. They demonize their targets. They demonize me. It doesn't bloody work with people with half a brain on active duty. Only have to read my books to realize that, connecting me to any form of racism is ludicrous. I say all labels are just illusions. This is just a body, whatever it is, to allow us to briefly experience this reality for a short time. Don't get caught in the fact of I am are this and I am are that. You are consciousness, the same consciousness we all are, having an experience in a body called a label. So the idea is ludicrous. But the point is that it's giving the Jewish people a bad name around the world, in the sense of, like everything, we're back to what I said a few minutes ago, judging everybody by the group. So I hear people, sometimes say, it's the Jews. It's not. It's not. As you rightly point out, Jewish people, large numbers of Jewish people in Israel, are treated with absolute contempt by the Israeli elite, just as the American people are treated with contempt by their elite, and Britain the same, and France the same, Germany the same. So, but what I would say is, if people don't start speaking out and saying that these censorship groups, which target Jewish people, like I say, more fiercely than anybody else, if they don't start speaking out and saying, hold on a minute, this guy should not have his freedom of speech, or this lady should not have her freedom of speech destroyed, and it should not be done in my name by this group that's controlled by the Israeli government. Do you know we've had a situation in the last couple of weeks where a journalist in America called Abby Martin, she used to work for RT, she was stopped from speaking at a university because she refused to sign a pledge of allegiance to Israel. This is an American speaking at an American university and can't unless she signs a pledge of allegiance to Israel. And this is happening in many, many states. We've had Roger Waters, the Pink Floyd singer, who's had his promotion of his musical events banned by the National Baseball Association, or whatever they call their organization in America, because of B'nai B'rith going to the baseball organization and saying this guy is an absolute anti-Semite. He's not. He just thinks, wouldn't it be nice if Palestinians were treated with fairness and justice? So he's had his promotion in America of his events banned. Now, when these ultra Zionist hate groups do this, the psychology is it's the Jews. It's not. People being treated in Israel, Israelis, with contempt by their elite are not having Roger Waters' promotions banned. They're not demanding a pledge of allegiance by Americans to American states. And if people realized it in Israel, the scale of the censorship that's coming out of there, in their name wrongly, they would be aghast, because it's not good for the way that people see Jewish people in general. Because, like I say, they keep making the same mistake of saying that person from this group is doing this, so all of them are responsible. It's not true, but that's the way it goes.
Well, as you know, that I told you a few times that we talk, I told you that here they are destroying the Jewish people from the families. They start there. This is why they did the Court of Family in 1995. You have more than 200 fathers are hanging themselves and suicide every year in Israel when they are fighting for their right to raise the kids. And another important point, I think, dear David, is I told you about the caravans now, and the people are getting out of the city because they lost everything. But the major of the people keep on being a sheep. And it's not that they are not smart, as you said, they are not stupid. And the Israeli people suffer, believe me, if I want the people in the world really understand, the Israeli people are shouting for help, really help, because they have to act normal in an unnormal way of living. And they know the power that Israel having all over the world with the leaders. You know what I mean? It's like a very psychologic, I believe it's a very psychologic system and situation that the Israeli people have to deal with. They cannot talk out because they have to deal it inside. They have the conflict. You understand what I mean, David?
Mm-hmm.
So what is the way I really want to wake up all Israel? This is why I do what I do. How can I, do something? Tell me what to do to wake up every Israeli, please.
I've been doing this for a long time, and
I know.
What I've never tried to do is to try to persuade people that they should do anything in terms of see that what I'm saying has validity. It's their choice. All you can do is put information in front of people, and then they decide. And the information must do its work. What you're working against is fear. People are frightened of taking on authority. But if we don't, then that authority is going to lock down everything on a level that would have made George Orwell wince. So it's time that people realize that doing nothing is no longer an option unless you want to accept global tyranny operating in every single country. And by that, I mean the absolute 24/7 control of everyone's life via AI and technology in the way that is most obvious, but nowhere near the final planned outcome in China. And what people need to do is start getting together with others. If one person takes a stand, well, yes, the government can pick them off. But if loads and loads of people come together and take a stand together, it's much more difficult. The numbers alone show the reality of where the power is. There's 7 billion people plus in the world now, and the number of people in full knowledge of what they're doing and why, that are driving the direction of the world, is a unbelievable fraction of that 7 billion. And like I say, divide and rule is crucial, because they have to divide that massive number of people, because the consequences for the few of that massive number starting to realize the game is obvious. It's game over. So it's important that people realize that doing nothing is no longer an option. Because if you do nothing, you're going to have to face yourself as this trots on, or sprints on as it is now. And every day you're going to see it moving further and further along the road. So let's just stiffen the backbone and do what we can now, rather than wait until we're much further along the road and the control system of AI and technology is further along the road than it is now, and becomes with every day more difficult to to unravel. And so it's important that people get together in groups, and that those groups connect with each other. And let's get some kind of movement together, not just focusing on certain subject areas, but those subject areas connecting with other groups operating in other subject areas, because it all fits in the end. You know, you can see a situation with I don't know, transgender, which is more and more expanding, and you can't say this, you can't say that, can't say the other. And then you see Elon Musk using his SpaceX operation to put thousands, tens of thousands of satellites in the sky. And astronomers are complaining they can't see the night sky as they could before. Now, if you looked at those two situations, you'd say, well, there's no connection between them. What's the connection between transgender and Elon Musk and what he's doing in the sky? But you can put it together, because they're all part of the same thing. This smart grid is based on what Ray Kurzweil, the Google executive, calls the cloud. Think Wi-Fi, a global Wi-Fi cloud of information, which and AI, which he wants to attach the human brain to. Talks about connecting the brain to the cloud. Now, if you're going to have a global cloud to which the population and all technology is going to be connected, and then whoever controls the cloud controls everything connected to it, then you're going to have to cover every inch of the planet with Wi-Fi. No area omitted. And what's happening with Elon Musk is that these tens of thousands of satellites that are going up are designed overwhelmingly to beam back at the Earth Wi-Fi and 5G, this next level of communicative power, which is being introduced without testing, because it's vital to make this grid work. So Musk is making it possible for this smart grid to function with the connections coming from space. And you know, Elon Musk, his grandfather was the leader of the Canadian Technocracy Party in the 1930s. The Technocracy Party that was campaigning for the very world that I've been describing in this chat, the technocracy world that we're seeing now in China. And wow. Elon Musk, just a coincidence, nothing to worry about, who's playing a major part, not just through SpaceX and the satellites, but through electric cars, which are just a stepping stone to autonomous cars connected to the grid. And autonomous cars mean that the computer, which you won't control, will decide where you can go and where you can't go. Because if they don't want you to go somewhere, instead of you driving there in a petrol car like you would now, you can't, because the car won't take you there, because the computer will be encoded not to take you there. He's also, Elon Musk, come out some years ago, you may remember, and said that AI could be the end of humanity. Brackets true. Yeah. And yet, connecting AI to the human brain, etc. And then he starts a company called Neuralink to connect the brain to computers. So Elon Musk, I do tend to use the word fraud and Elon Musk in the same sentence quite often these days. So you've got that side. There's Elon Musk. So how's that connected to transgender? Well, where they're going is that not only that are they creating this technological grid, they want to transform the human body from a biological state to a synthetic biological state. You hear this thing called synthetic biology all the time now. So the synthetic human, and is being developed in the public arena to an extent, but the real deal is outside the public arena, where it's much farther ahead than anything you see in the public domain. This synthetic human will not be able to procreate. They will be created technologically. And that's exactly what Aldous Huxley described in Brave New World, written in 1932, because he knew what was coming. The reason Brave New World was so accurate, incredibly that far past, with what's happening now, and the reason that George Orwell was so accurate in 1984 and could talk about technology like telescreens that saw you in your own, recorded you in your own front room, when that technology was not even near to be known about in the public arena. But now we have them. They're called smart televisions. Yeah. And these smart televisions today are only Mark 1 and 2 of where it's going. Nothing like where it's meant to go. And so you have this synthetic human goal agenda where they won't be able to procreate. And because they won't be able to procreate, first of all, there's no need for men anymore. And you see this, that men are being targeted by the woke mafia around the world, and sperm counts are falling dramatically around the world, particularly in the Western world. You then have this situation of, okay, this synthetic human not only won't be able to procreate, it will have no gender. So how do you go from male, female, very clear perceptions of people, male, female, two sexes, to that? Well, what you do is you confuse gender, and then you fuse gender, which is what's happening. This is why I quote a guy in the book, in my books, who was a big Rockefeller family insider, who addressed a meeting of pediatricians in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1969, and shocked everybody by asking them to turn off recording equipment and not take notes, because he was going to tell them how the world was going to change. And one of the doctors did take notes, and in around 2004 did a series of interviews with an alternative website, because he'd realized that what this guy, Dr. Richard Day, was called, he worked at the Mount Sinai Hospital in New York and was an executive of Planned Parenthood, a Rockefeller organization. This doctor realized that what Day said in 1969 was going to happen was happening. So he did a series of interviews. And one of the things that Day said in 1969 to those pediatricians is, we're going to make boys and girls the same. And we're seeing this now, this incessant hysteria of propaganda about the no gender human, in effect, the fused gender human. The people, 99% of them, who are pushing this will have no idea what's behind it. But what's behind it is moving to this no gender, no procreation, synthetic biological human. So you there have two things: Elon Musk and what he's doing, and the transgender agenda, and they're fundamentally connected. And if people read my books, they'll see that everything in the end is connected. For instance, another thing that Richard Day said in 1969 to those pediatricians is what they were going to do was manipulate a situation where there were massive movements, migrations of people into Europe, America, etc., as it's turned out, to transform those cultures because, he said, we are going to delete countries. He talked, as I have, about a world government, which is what this technocracy will be controlled by. And the world government would control the entire planet. And instead of having countries that would just break up into different regions, you'd have the world government, then you'd have the super states under that, like the European Union. And then under that, you'd have regions, nations and countries would be gone. And as he said to those doctors, Richard Day, it's much, much easier to get people to accept that their countries disappear, in effect, I'm paraphrasing him, and to bring an end to nations, if you have cultures that are flooded with other cultures, and you have a cultural fusion. Now the indigenous sense of culture is being diluted, and as it's diluted, the resistance to having the country itself disappear obviously gets less and less and less as a defined culture itself disappears. And where this is going, it's not, people say, oh, racism, oh, I don't care. I care about the truth. Grow up. The thing to remember, it's like that pastor Niemöller is quoted as saying in Nazi Germany, first they came for the communists, I wasn't a communist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the trade unionists, I was not a trade unionist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the Jews, and I was not a Jew, so I did nothing. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. This is the process that's happening. They're targeting Western society now, and they're targeting Western culture. They're targeting the white race overwhelmingly. That's why there's no protection from political correctness for that. But the idea is, once you pick that one off, you pick the next one off and the next one off. Because what this world government tyranny wants is one global monoculture, where there are no defined cultures of any kind. And we're only seeing one being targeted at the moment. But once that's sorted, the rest will be picked off one by one by one. And that will include, by the way, the Jewish culture and the Judaistic culture that you now recognize as the Jewish community's way of going about things. So we're all in the gun sights, and we need to come together, otherwise they'll succeed, and we mustn't let them.
That's right. When you talk about the transformation, you know what I see? You remember in your lectures that you give, there is a picture of someone in the government, and there is a bubble. And in the back, you have someone there in the back, like using him as a puppet.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that they are doing now the same to the people, to the normal people, like simple people, like they are the controller of, they're giving the people to create simulation of themselves and control it from, you know what I mean?
Well, this process of transforming humans as we know them, let me just say what Kurzweil has said is going to happen around the period of 2030. That the human brain will be connected to AI, and I'm quoting him here, that from that time, AI will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking, as we know it today, is virtually negligible. There is words. And the idea is to move towards the digital, virtual human. So basically, this sounds fantastic, but if people only look at the evidence, and indeed what's unfolding, they'll realize that the fantastic is actually true. They're moving us towards becoming a virtual reality phenomenon, virtual reality race. What they're doing now already is creating people that don't exist, virtual people, And if you saw them, and you saw them on the internet and on your computer screen, and you saw pictures of them, you see them on the internet, you could see what they were doing and what they were saying, you'd think they were human. But they're not. They're not even a copy. They're not even a copy of a human, a digital copy. They are a digital creation of a totally new person and personality that you would take to be human. And you look at how these robot people, that are being developed, particularly in places like Japan, they're getting closer and closer to human. And the idea is what's happening is humanity is being fused with AI, fused with machines, so that we actually eventually become the machines. This is get assimilated by the machines. And here's the way they're doing it in a very everyday manner. The idea is that you get people to more and more and more interact with AI as if AI is human. So you're starting to fuse the difference between humans and AI. And here's a great example of it. Personal assistants. They have these devices, is it Echo and Siri and all these things in their homes. Some people I've come across have one in every room. And they're interacting with this AI device as if AI is human. So that's the dynamic of the interaction. And then you've got car manufacturers now who are introducing these personal assistants into cars. So now you're going to be in your car chatting with AI as if it's human. You've got all these toys now for young kids. Get them as young as possible, and then you'll get them for life. Dolls and other things where they're AI attached to the internet, and you are communicating with AI as if this doll is human. And so what they're doing is fusing this difference between human and machine AI in the same way they're fusing the difference between male and female. And they are fusing us into this completely different human, not just in terms of the human form, but also in terms of the human mind, which will actually be the AI mind. And this is moving so fast because they want to move this quick enough that it's in place and in a situation of control before enough people have realized it's happening. And what I'm trying to do, excuse me, is alert people, as many people as possible, so we do see it's happening before the fait accompli is complete.
You know, when I talk with one of my best friends, he's a very big mentalist in the world. He's making show all over the world. He told me, we have a lot of chats together, and he told me, he asked me, Guy, where this is going? And listen what I said to him. Take a look at you as example. You can have 2,000 people with your mentalist, make all together, draw something, the same picture with your tricks that you have of mentalism. It's not magic, okay? Because it's the human behavior and the human, how he act and react. You talk about it all your life, David. I said to him, imagine what can happen when you have those bots like robots, yes, that have every nuance of people. They are studying the human being. They create themselves a natural human being, how they act, how they work, how they action, reaction, and everything. Imagine what can happen who have the control of the button of all the what happened now with human, what is going to happen with human. It's the same that you say, David, one word by word, you don't miss nothing. of what you say. I offer people to really, really read your work because it's like really magic to have everything so very good explained. That I mean, you don't take it to a high level to understand. You really deliver it like it's humanity. This is why I'm saying all this. And when I talk with you about the Israeli people are going like ships, when I explain them about George Soros, and I say to them, listen, I give the facts, as you say. I show the people the facts, but they say, no, but look what he do good. I said, yes, but he give 85% of the money to good things, but the 15% that he put of evil, pure evil, David, pure evil, they don't see that. They don't see that. They said, guy, you are conspiracy guy. You understand?
Yeah, because there are no conspiracies. No one has ever conspired with others to create an end, an outcome. They've never done that. It's just an illusion that anyone's ever done that. The fact that it's happening all the time, shouldn't make people believe that it is actually happening. George Soros is a classic. He has so far handed over $32 billion to a network called the Open Society Foundations. Now, the name of that gives the game away immediately. Open Society. What that means is open borders. And that's why George Soros is funding non-governmental organizations, charities, and other fake grassroots operations, known as AstroTurf, fake grassroots, in America and Europe, to drive this mass migration agenda, which is the agenda of this global cult, like I've explained. This Open Society Foundation network operates in 100 countries. It was, and you'll see if people read the books, it was behind the Arab Spring. See, and it was behind the coup, not the revolution, the coup in Ukraine. You see, you can only, if you want to regime change countries, you can only do an Iraq and a Libya a certain number of times before people say, hold on a minute, we're invading someone else. What's going on? So the ideal that you want, this is very relevant to Israel and the Middle East, the ideal you want is to manipulate the population of the target country to remove the regime for you. So what you do, and this is what these Open Society Foundations specialize in, you train and fund people in the art of civil disobedience, and you put them into target countries. They start to cause unrest. Now, as they cause unrest, because in most countries there's a lot of injustice, the environment, the climate is always there to stir up unrest. So you stir up unrest. Now, more and more people from the population who are genuinely wanting to overthrow the regime but have no idea where the core is being controlled from, they then join the agitation and the unrest. And eventually what you have, as you had in, that square in Cairo, a vast number of people there together to overthrow the regime. What you do, however, is you make sure, when you orchestrate this, that on the other side of the fake revolution, in this case the Arab Spring, there's not a genuine government of the people in place. So we had the Arab Spring in Egypt, which resulted in Egypt now being run by a military junta. I mean, it's a joke. And the same happened in Syria, and the same happened in Libya. And what you do is this. In those situations, you don't just have civil unrest and what have you. You actually arm the opposition. So they armed the opposition in Libya because they wanted rid of Gaddafi. They have done for a long time. And they armed the opposition in Syria. And what they then do is get that opposition to start firing and attacking the regime that they want to unseat. When that's happening, basically the global media is and the global political network is silent. And then the governments that were being targeted respond to the attacks by the people armed by the West, not least America. And at that point, the politicians can't get to a microphone quick enough, and the media can't write big enough headlines. He's killing his own people. And so what happens is the Soros organizations create the agitation and the unrest. And then when the government responds to the unrest or even the armed opposition, then the politicians come in and say, he's killing his own people. We've got to go in and protect the people. So NATO and the European countries and Britain, always in there, and America, they protected the people of Libya from violence by bombing the crap out of them and destroying the place and turning the highest per capita income country in Africa into a basket case in which people are being openly slave traded in the markets. And you've got the warlord factions, which Gaddafi was keeping apart and under control, now running riot against each other. And that, of course, because the way this whole plan is worked out is like dominoes. You know, when they put all those dominoes in a line and you knock the first one, it knocks the second, knocks the third, and eventually they all fall. This is how this plan is worked out. So they knew, they didn't just want to cause mayhem in Middle East Arab countries, a policy that was driven out of the elite of Israel, by the way, in conjunction with the elite in America. They didn't want to just do that. They knew that if they'd knocked that domino down, then the chaos and the violence would be such that vast numbers of people from those countries would try to flee.
Yeah.
And they did. And they fled into Europe. And they were at first genuine refugees. And I'm the first to say, hey, we need to help these people and take them in. But what then happened is these Soros organizations and others then started to get vast numbers, far, far greater numbers of migrants that weren't fleeing war from other countries in the Near East and Africa to piggyback on the movement of people into Europe to increase the numbers dramatically. So what do they say? Two birds with one stone? That's what they did. And so what you've got is this double whammy. The Soros organizations create the agitation, which creates the excuse to go in, and you then use the military on the back of that excuse to go in and remove the regime that you want. And of course, without the intervention of Russia, Assad would have been gone by now, just like Gaddafi is gone.
That's right.
Oh, and by the way, the moment Trump was elected, because Trump is owned by the elite that run Israel.
Of course.
The moment he was elected, I put on the internet, just very soon afterwards, key word of the Trump administration, Iran. Because Iran's on their list as well. And the only reason that Trump, who's given the Israeli elite everything it wanted, moving the embassy, this deal of the century, which is just I mean, fairness and justice. Are we having a laugh? So the reason they've got all that is because they own him. But what he's not given Netanyahu yet is what Netanyahu really wants, and those that control Netanyahu, more to the point.
Of course.
And that's a war with Iran. And the reason he's not been able to do that, although he's basically at war with them now through sanctions, is because Trump came to power in 2016 on the basis of he wouldn't go into these foreign wars that Obama had and Bush had, etc. So he's coming up this year to another election, and it would be electoral suicide to go to war with Iran before that election. If he wins, after that will be quite another thing. Although I think people need to keep their eyes on Michael Bloomberg on that side, on the Democrat side as well in relation to that. But so these things are not happening by chance. And the way they defend George Soros is the usual way. They say to criticize George Soros is anti-Semitic. Well, it is if you're criticizing him because he's Jewish. That's the definition of anti-Semitism for me. Discrimination or hatred of Jewish people for being Jewish. I challenge Soros and what he's doing because of what he's doing and the effect on the world and the effect on vast numbers of people. And, people may look at some of the things he does and say, oh, he's doing good things. I tell you, after tracking this guy for 30 years, the things that may seem good on the surface have ulterior motives as well that are beneficial to this agenda. And so this is a wonderful example of what I said earlier. Instead of looking at George Soros or Michael Bloomberg, whatever, and saying Soros is Jewish, you look at him and you say, what is Soros doing and how is that affecting adversely other people, in this case, vast numbers of people? And you make a judgment on what he's doing, not what he is, what he's doing. And if we do that, then these efforts to demonize those who are trying to uncover for everybody what's going on in the world will not be silenced as they are by being called anti-Semitic or racist when it's the last thing that they are.